Good afternoon, dear colleagues. We are having an interesting session this afternoon. Its title is Digital Currencies and Their Regulation. We would like to touch on a few subjects and to draw a line between the technology of distributed ledgers, private currencies, their present and future, the digital national currency, and we would like to exchange experiences with colleagues who are involved in several projects using both technologies and private currencies to see where the advantages and risks are and what we should react to as a society and state, and what the challenges are there. Now, my guests are Astanin, chairman of the National Settlement Depository. Now he is in charge of National Settlement Depository, and he also represents Russia and SWIFT. Dmitry, Eremeev, president of FIX group of companies and an international IT incubator, which is active in the Russian market. A lot of solutions associated with crypto technologies, processing, and payments. And Dmitry is always at the edge of novelty, innovation, and business advantages. So his statement is going to be of great interest. Andrey Lugovoy, deputy chair of the committee of the State Duma committee to fight security and anti-corruption. On my left is Joerg Molt, founder of Satoshi School. Satoshi is a nickname used when setting up a blockchain as a platform for the Bitcoin. We don't know who's behind that nickname. Maybe Joerg will tell us. We are also keen to know how the system works in reality and what, in fact, are the advantages and disadvantages that Joerg sees in cryptocurrencies, and whether there's any point in creating a national digital currency. He works in many countries, and his vision will be of great interest to us. The next member of our panel is Alexei Panfyorov, vice chair of the board Sovcombank, which is actively working on its business model based on new technologies. And Alexei sees as one of his major objectives creating a new model in the bank, and he's still wavering whether a separate digital bank should be set up or it should be done within the general bank framework. And I'll ask him also what part of the distributed ledger model is applicable to his activities. On my left is also Mamoru Fujimoto, Executive Director for the promotion of blockchain technologies, SBI Holdings, a company that has been in the market for over a decade, not only as a consulting company, but also as a technology company, which has come up with a lot of new solutions also in the field of blockchain technologies. And we are keen to know what is happening in Japan in terms of cryptocurrencies and the national digital currency. And I hope that Mr. Fujimoto will take these questions, and we will discuss the future from the perspective of business and the regulator. But in the first place, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Astanin because only a few days ago it was announced on a large scale that NSD, together with Raiffeisen and Megaphone, launched a new blockchain-based platform. And I have two questions. Why did you decide to create that platform, and for what type of operations? And then my second question is, what difficulties were you faced with when developing this solution? How promising you think will it be in other NSD areas of activities? Thank you, Olga. I would like to thank the Central Bank for the organization of this forum because it gives us a unique opportunity to talk to the community and the regulators. Talking of the blockchain technology and specific legally important events, I would like to say that we profess a pragmatic approach to fintechs and the blockchain. And so when we got interested in this in 2005, it was a popular subject of discussion then, and we began to study where we could test the system and see how it works and whether it is true that it has the properties that its developers claim. Our first case was simple enough. We used a blockchain platform for the voting of the stockholders meeting, and after testing the process, we realized that indeed it was likely to have the properties announced by its developers. It's reliable. It's not very fast. Its speed is not too high, and it's cheap. It's cheaper than traditional. The second case mentioned by Olga was a transaction associated with the placement of commercial bonds in a closed market on a closed subscription. The issuer was Megaphone. NSD was a party to the deal, and one of the the blockchain system was involved here on the basis of a smart contract. Settlement took place, and then those blockchain transactions were downloaded to our traditional systems and generated legally significant reports. It was a mixed model involving no money. It was just the movement of securities in it. So what we concluded from that case was that smart contracts and a blockchain-based environment can actually dramatically change transactions with securities, and the traditional process of contracts, agreements, and everything is all replaced by a smart contract and a closed system that cannot be compromised in any way. And this happens fast. So for trading systems where nanoseconds, it takes nanoseconds for a deal, this might not be a good idea, but elsewhere it's a convenient solution. We also partnered with Wakes, a company that provides a site for ICO, but our interest was to respond to the growing need of big institutional investors that are ready to enter the market for an accounting system for digital assets, a regulated system that would operate on the basis of fully legal procedures and includes all the procedures, know your customer, and anti-laundering, and so on. So the idea was to build such a system, and then it was expected to generate some demand for digital currencies. So we announced that partnership. We said we would move on if the regulator was able to regulate those matters, if it could classify digital assets and define how the infrastructure should work with those assets, who had access to those deals. Then, by analogy with the securities market, we believed that an accounting system for digital assets could be built, and that could become one of the most significant infrastructural decisions with effects for the financial infrastructure of Russia at large. You said something very important. You built a closed network because in terms of distributed networks, there are several models. There's an open network, which is not regulated and not managed. It's a trust environment. There are hybrid types, and there's a closed type when you identify your customers, when you see the flows of documents and understand how transactions are performed. Is there any managing agent in that network who sets the rules and monitors the operations? Well, it is assumed that the creator of the system is its operator and administrator, no matter how contradictory it may sound with regard to distributed ledgers. It does presuppose the presence of a central operator, and those who are part of this network follow the rules. So the mechanism of identification and observance of rules is something that should be embedded as we see it. In parallel, we resolved one mathematical task because it's presumed that distributed blockchain system means distributed registers where everybody knows everything else. But for confidentiality, it is no good, and we resolved it with the zero-sum method, and it's a mathematical algorithm which slows the system down, but it embeds this new synergetic property when all the nodes have all the info about all the transactions, but every node can only see the info pertaining to it, and the rest is encoded. Well, since the technology is not very mature, why does everybody launch pilot projects? You said yourself that there are no good comprehensive solutions in terms of privacy, efficiency, and legal protection. What are your subsequent plans in developing the system? So, well, you've launched a pilot and you found it could be used, and are you happy with that alone, or are you planning to launch a large-scale industry-wide system? Of course, we're interested in industry-wide development of this technology, not this system, but the technology, and we appeal to our legislator and regulator for amendments to the law that would define the procedure of transactions in this infrastructure, and then the technology will be applicable to large-scale operations like the issue of bonds or the settlement of deals, and in any way, large-scale progress depends on legislation. And I know from the media that this work is underway in Russia, and this is inspiring. So we are prepared to offer our expertise for the drafting of such law. And we believe that the technology of smart contracts, which is based on blockchains, is really revolutionary, and it brings down costs. It guarantees execution of promise, and it can preclude some negative consequences like reverse repo. I would like to make two conclusions from what you said. The technology is interesting, of course. We also have launched pilot projects for mortgages and letters of credit. So far, it's a better fit for offline operations because a distributed storage system is interesting. But as an online processing system, it is so far behind the traditional systems. So I am under no illusion. I do not harbor any illusions that a distributed ledger will replace everything anytime soon. It will be used where it gives creates new quality for businesses and consumers, and where you can assure an environment of trust that will guarantee to the customer that it protects the customer's data.
If we get back to the discussion of the digital assets, then I would not equalize the digital assets with the distributed register. These are two different things. And the issue what technology is used is a separate issue. And what type of the distributed registers fits it best is also another issue. I would like to ask Mr. Molt, based on his experience and his inclusion into the blockchain technology for the most famous system, Bitcoin, and him participating in advising on private currencies and the technology itself. So the question, do you think as of today and in the near future, what will be the destiny, the fate of the private cryptocurrencies? What are the benefits and what risks emerging, and whether the distributed register technology could be used for other purposes, not only cryptocurrencies?
Okay, so nice to meet you here. Nice to be here. Thank you for the invitation. First, let me say where I come from. I started to make blockchain systems like this in the mid of the 90s. We worked on projects like DigiCash, Mcash, and some projects. We stopped it in 2001, 2002 because we can't fix the security issues. And then Satoshi Nakamoto was coming around, take a look at it, and said, I have the solution, and put it away. And that's what we see today is the Bitcoin blockchain. From my point of view, you can imagine I am from the beginning in Bitcoins, and so you can imagine I have a lot of these Bitcoins. In fact, I have 250,000 Bitcoins at the moment. So with this price, I never run out of money. And if I see all the projects here and all the fintech projects, from my point of view, it is at the moment a circus. When I started, the Bitcoin blockchain is there because it could never be hacked. On my salary list, more than 30 of the best hackers in the world. We hacked Ethereum, we hacked Ripple, we hacked all blockchain systems we have. Today we have 1,000 different blockchains, like EOS or something like this, and they are all hackable. The last time I have been in May on Coinsbank Cruise, we hacked the Canadian exchange, and we show the world that there's a big problem at the moment. All people don't know Also, government and regulator don't know about cryptocurrency at all, and they don't understand the value of it at all. So we create for the financial system blockchains, we create for everything blockchains, but we can do all the things on the Bitcoin blockchain and it's secure. Most of the people think that some quirky guys like me control the Bitcoin, but that's not the truth. Bitcoin is not controlled, and that's why it's important. When we talk about digital IDs and something and store digital IDs, what would you say if I go, you have all your digital passports and something like this, and a guy like me and my friends is coming around and hack your system and take off the data? What is the value about digital IDs then or before? And a point of view, if we talk about, I'm not against the financial sectors and I'm not against ICOs and so. I speak for humanity in this thing. I think governments have an opportunity to have on the one side financial systems, and on the other hand they have to take care of their inhabitants. So that is it's a more important guest we have today. We forgot the people out there. If you look for a Bitcoin view, the fintech is only such a small ball. Yeah, because people use Bitcoin, they can use it. We have decentralized exchanges, we have decentralized wallets, we do not use internet at all. The people like me, they buy Bitcoins on a way you can't see, you can't track, and something like this. And the problem we have is to come to the conclusion what is about tax savers, we're talking about terrorism, and we're talking about good things. But imagine there is someone out like me. With 250,000 Bitcoins on your wallet, $10 is $250,000 more on my wallet. So what I do is I go to Armenia, I go to the hospital, and we go there, give them money and say, what about build the best cancer station of the world? So that's what Bitcoin is doing. It is built wealthy for all. We have once in time, in our lifetime, for humanity, we have a value which is growing wealthy for everyone, not only for a part of people. But we have to take care about it. We have to take care for the people who use it. And if you do stock marketing or something like this, you know you have to get a little bit of knowledge what you are doing. Today, your friend, your son, your wife is going to the internet, investing in ICOs, and don't know what they do. Then after all, we have 90% of scams, and they go away. So what would you do as a regulator? You see this, you see the people are going running for money and lose all their money, and only a few people have all the money. Is this in a common for a new economy? So this problem we have all over the world. The Chinese people was going to shut down and make a cut and say ICOs are forbidden in a whole way. Now we are sitting in Russia. At that moment, the world is looking for Russia, because from Sochi they hope there will come a decision in how we will go on with regulate everything. So the world at the moment is looking at us. We are talking about business models and something like this. We're not talking about humanity. Bitcoin is talking about humanity, because that's my weapon. If you don't go my way, I do the Bitcoin thing. But I'm not here to take a weapon. I'm here to invite everyone, and that's what Satoshi School is over, to discuss both sides of the story. And I'm not here to forbid ICO, because ICO is a good motor to drive the Bitcoin price higher, because you have to explain Bitcoin before you can explain your project. That's why you always think about Bitcoin. And ICOs have to be controlled in a way that we can look after what happens with the money. And so we have to build platforms where I can say I spend 10,000 ruble, 20,000 ruble in the platform. What happens to the money at all? And is the promise they said, is it on the way? Yeah, and that's the way to regulate something. Bitcoiners are paying with Bitcoins in companies. Yeah, we buy flights. Yeah, I'm here and paid all with Bitcoins, you know. And I'm living in a world of Bitcoins, not with fiat money, but I spend the Bitcoins in the real companies. So the Japanese do. And then we have to control what do companies with this money. So, and that's a big thing to talk about. But we have to discuss both worlds. No one can say I'm the solution of all because I have Bitcoins. On the other side, fintech can say we have the solution because they have insecure systems. So where will we be in 5 years? I think some coins like Ethereum, Ripple will leave us, will stay for good, because they are not for payments. They are only to exchange value. They are the similar thing for having IPOs in the normal world. Yeah, That's the thing. They're not for payment. But all the other coins, we can create a coin called Satoshi coin today, and then we send the coin to all the people here out. But where's the value? You said it's 10, he is saying it's 20, he is saying it's 30. But it's going in a circle. Yeah, and if we talk about government coins, we can make a government coin. That's a nice thing, but it depends on a coin who has the strength to give the coin a power for the people outside there. So there is the solution in there. Yeah? If we have a coin, it's only in our community. What will you reach in 10 years? Nothing. Because you can't play with the coin, we can make it blind, we can make everything look set cash or something like this, we can do all the good things to the coin. But it is, if only we in a row use this coin, why should we make it blind or something? We trust each other. Where's the necessary then in this moment? If we go out for all the people in the world, we have a necessary for security and blindness and something like this. But not if we have a coin only for a community from such small people. Thank you.
Вы знаете, это вообще мечта жить в богатом.
It's a good dream to live in a wealthy society, to trust and to have wealth. We should be striving and dreaming to do that, but it does not happen for different reasons, both objective and subjective. And getting back to your thesis, as you, as the man of the universe, the man of the world, you would wish this type of currency, this good would make life better, wealthier, but the consumer qualities, much depends on the consumer qualities. Why this currency became popular in the world? It is anonymous and it's transboundary, and it gives the comfort that nobody sees what one pays whom. There is encoding, there are unique numbers, but you cannot track the process, you cannot track the procedure. It makes life easier for both good guys and bad guys. And it's a subtle question. Who and when using cryptocurrencies, because the issues of risks and gray zones are more than good will buying and using in a real sector. Okay, you're saying we will build the trusted area that would enable some type of currency to exist in the world, and we would all trust it all. But it means that first it should be a supra-state currency. The state regulators should agree that this currency exists in the environment. There should certain rules of its usage, and the question is, who is the guarantor of its security and this currency being used for goodwill purposes? And there's no a single person, or there is no force in the world that could guarantee to the users. So how do you see it if if you move along and ahead with your dream? Joerg?
If we look to Japan, there's no dream. It's a reality there. So we see the people are spending their bitcoins there. They see the government is also there. We also have banks there. The banks are not gone. In the future, I see the future of cryptocurrency, and especially in Bitcoin and something like this, is if you take money out of the ATM machine and cash, so what do you do with the money? It's in your decision. Will you go and buy drugs, or will you go and give the money to a store? The monetary system of Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies is the same. You decide what you do with your money, and the regulators want you to do nothing wrong with the money. And when we talk about it's not trackable or something like this, that's not depending. The main thing is we all need rules. And I gone to governments and they say, oh, they won't pay taxes. What will happen? If you look in history, when it come to the Romans with the taxes, there was the way taxes and everything, street taxes, it was all the same like today. 80% of the people are paying taxes and 20% not. Why it is so? Imagine one thing, if we haven't got taxes and we haven't got community money, what will be if you get cancer, you are very, very ill and you're strong ill and you go to the hospital and we haven't got a community system who will fix the costs. So you have to pay by your own. And if a doctor is saying to you your Visa card is not able to pay, you press the exit because with cancer you live 3 weeks, with medicals 2 more years. So where is the humanity inside there? People talk about it. So what will you do if you have 3 children? You have to go to work, both of them. Where will you leave your child? Think about that. It's all about costs. And who will pay the costs? If not the government have a social system and we don't pay for the social systems. Yeah? Who is controlling whom? The many people is when we talk about corruption, it's not only corruption and tax savers inside the people out there. It's inside the companies, it's inside governments. It's the same. We have to make transparency for all. And we are living in a world where people need transparency at all. We can build an environment with digital currencies or with their own currency or based on the technology from bitcoins to use it for protection. Yeah, because think about you make a blockchain system for your electricity and something like this and I go and hack it. So what it is all about? It's not a question about how to use the money in a wrong way or in a good way. It's the question how to make an environment that we can come together at all. And Japan was going this way, South Korea also. And there are many things. We see it in Austria, we see it in Switzerland. You can pay your taxes with bitcoins also. But the regulators don't go away. And so also the banks go away because that's banks as a service. They show how. And we will go for this moment when the regulators will say, you all have to pay taxes in one way, equal. That will come. I see it in 10 years. You will see all governments of the world have a system of taxes where you can't say, I will save taxes because you have to pay. In Germany, we have a thing, we called it radio and television fees, yeah? And they say, if you have a radio or television, you have to pay fees. Then they say, then they saw it didn't work, and now everyone has to pay, no matter if he has a television or not. He has to pay. And that's what I see, and that's the effort of regulation. So we have to find out how many taxes we have to get. So we have education, we have social environment, we have all the good things we have now. And then we have to think over the old system. But also, I think, in the new world, you go to an old system, ask for regulations. Think about you are in a new world and think about new regulations.
Спасибо.
Thanks a lot, because since you've mentioned the experience of Japan as a good example of combination of regulations and banking system and using cryptocurrencies, and they have announced that they're going to develop their own digital currency. I have a question for Mr. Fujimoto. Mr. Fujimoto, do you think what is the underlying reason or driver to allow private currencies? Why Japan took a decision to use private currencies? What goals have been achieved or not achieved? And another thing, you have announced the decision to develop the national digital currency, and it happened pretty fast after the clearance for private currencies. Does that mean that you realize that there are risks in the private currency, and you would like to mitigate those risks with the national digital currency? Or do you believe that the private currencies and the national digital currency would exist in parallel in the country, if you please?
First of all, thank you very much for inviting me to this place. It's my honor to be here. I'm from the company called SBI. Most of you don't know who SBI is, but we have been providing the internet-based financial services ranging from brokerage, banking, insurance, all internet-based. So it's maybe we can call ourselves as a Japanese version of the Tinkoff, maybe. I don't know exactly what Tinkoff is doing, but... So we are rather a challenger than the follower against the regulator. So I apologize upfront if I criticize the regulator. But I try to speak on behalf of the Japanese Financial Service Agency, how the regulation of the Japanese regulation grows. So most of you know the name of the Mount Gox. Does everybody know the name of the Mount Gox? In 2013, Mount Gox, based in Tokyo, was the world's largest Bitcoin exchange. In 2014, it collapsed. But CEO says that it was stolen, but it was not because of the technical issue, but it's just a fraudulent of the CEO. So actually, that is the beginning of the regulator start thinking of how to regulate cryptocurrency. So the Japanese government actually make the cryptocurrency regulation as a national regulation. I believe that that is actually first country to actually make cryptocurrency regulation into effect. And the purpose of defining this new regulation is to protect consumers. That is the first objective. The second objective is for anti-money laundering. That's based on the FATF recommendation. I believe most of the bankers know what FATF recommendation is. So the regulation is based on those two objectives. They are not trying to regulate the market itself, but they are trying to get rid of the bad guys from the market. That is the main purpose. So because of the purpose, the regulation itself is pretty simple. They mandate all of the exchanges to be registered at FSA. And they have to do KYC AML regulation. That's the same rule applied to the financial institutions. And the third very important point is that they have to segregate customers' asset from their own asset. So those three rules, basic rules, are actually defined in the regulations. What happened is that because this is a light regulations, many fintech companies try to apply for the new license. So the new regulation actually went into effective April 1st this year, and approximately 40 companies apply for the new license. And FSA put a grace period of 6 months so that all of the exchange follow the guidelines which regulators released on April. The result was that only 11 was approved on last week. The first license issued was September 29th, very last day of the grace period. What happened was that most of the fintech companies running the Bitcoin exchange or the cryptocurrency exchange thought that they just do what they are doing the same way as they have been doing. But that's wrong. FSA was very disappointed that after seeing the application of the license, it's almost nothing. So SBI, because we run the financial services for long years, not long years, but a little less than the 2 decades, but still we know how to apply for the FSA. So only 9 existing exchange get the license. And 2 newcomers, ourselves, and 1 more internet FX service provider get the new license. Others are still pending for verification. That actually tells that the FSA, even FSA put the very light regulations, they are viewing us as a kind of financial institution, not us, but sorry. They are still viewing viewing cryptocurrency exchange as pseudo-financial institutions. That's probably maybe the right action because they take out of the bad guys, not bad guys, but they are only licensing the correct ones who behave themselves, right? So those who are not sure if they can protect the consumer, I mean the customer's asset, FSA doesn't want to issue license. So that is the fact. And After the regulation came in, some other related regulations are defined. The first one is the tax regulations. In the past, in Japan, Bitcoin was considered as some commodity goods. That means buyer have to pay consumption tax. Currently, it's not very high, but 8% consumption tax has to be paid. But that's so inconvenient. So tax office abolished, or actually released a new decree that's saying that the currency is not taxable, I mean, in terms of the consumption tax. Then another tax regulation came in. That's actually the capital gain tax. No one actually filed the capital gain yet because there's no regulations. So in order to regulate how the capital gain is filed into the tax office, they defined it this September. Then, pending open is accounting rule. We do not have standardized accounting rule, but it was just, draft version was released yesterday by the Accounting Standard Bureau of Japan. So we are still the governments are still in progress, defining many related regulations. That will be finalized, I hope, by the end of this year. So even if they are minimal regulations, it's better for the consumer to actually investing on something new without fear. Everybody has to understand how to trade it, how to file the tax. So that's very important thing, I believe. I don't like over-regulations, but I believe that the minimum regulation is required so that many people can join the market. So that's the actually progress of the Japanese regulations. So that's about it on behalf of the FSA. Regarding the private currency and government currency, there are lots of projects underway. Even Bank of Japan is running the POC, Proof of Concept project, issuing a new central bank digital cash. The skepticism I have is that the Bank of Japan may not be that serious, probably because they are not just a regulator, but they also protect existing banking business. If the central bank digital currency is issued by the central bank will take up some business from the banks, existing banks. So probably that's the primary reason. I'm just guessing. I'm not talking on behalf of the Bank of Japan. So I believe that is the reason why they are just running the pilot project, but they are not serious about making it production. Instead, Japanese mega banks recently announced that they are issuing the private coin in order to let me back up. Japanese payment environment is slightly different from Western environment. Japanese really likes real cash. Approximately 70% of the retail payment is done by cash. Only 30% are done by digital. So government is thinking that why Japanese banks are not taking lead to the digital cash economy. So they are pushing mega banks to take a lead on this initiative. So that's primarily the reason why mega banks recently announced a new project. But I'm also very skeptic about the mega banks' attitude. They are just following what regulator says. So in order to challenge them, SBI actually announced to issue a new coin called S-Coin. That's also the private coin. We are not relying on the national infrastructure. We are going to develop our own infrastructure. So the competition start. Again, that is actually the payment coin. Nothing to do with the Bitcoin or Ethereum or XRP. That's actually the public coin flowing around the world. We are actually issuing the new coin, substituting the real cash. So the digital cash will be divided into two parts. That's a cryptocurrency like Bitcoin, Ethereum, and also the kind of cryptocurrency issued by the banks or financial institutions. That's primarily for settlement purpose, not for the investment purpose. So I foresee that if Bitcoin or XRP or Ethereum can be a stable coin, we can use it for payment. But currently the volatility is too high. It's not convenient to use those cryptocurrency for the payment. So we are going to create something new. That's what we are currently doing. I'm not quite sure if it's right or wrong. Maybe Joerg has a different opinion.
Thank you. I have a few questions. I will later give you the floor. You say you opted for regulation and licensed exchanges operating private coins. But what's your approach toward mining? Those who mine and create the issue of private cryptocurrencies. What is the road chosen by Japan here? And my second question is about ICO. As Joerg has said, ICO is good as an idea, but the way it's applied in actual reality, when 90 or 99% of it is fraud and deception of the customer without any guarantees to deliver any results, then how do you regulate these risks as associated with the ICO?
For the questions, it's a really good question. Private currency doesn't require mining at all. Mining is required because it's public, on the public chain. Private permission chain. So in case of the S-Coin platform, SBI is the operator as well as the issuer, and the value is actually kept by the trust of SBI. It's same as the other banks, mega banks coin too. If central banks issue central bank digital currency, they don't need miners because miner is required only to guarantee that the publicly issued coins has certain value. That's my view. Regarding the ICO, we do not have ICO regulation as of yet. The only regulation we have currently is that all of the cryptocurrency exchange has to register each one of the coins they trade. So in the course of the licensing process, regulator take a look at the so-called white paper, which explains the detail of each cryptocurrency, and they say yes and no. So officially, cryptocurrency exchange cannot trade hundreds of coins, but they can only trade limited number of coins. And still, the issuance actually happened. Last week, one company raised approximately about the 40 million US dollar by ICO in Japan. That was the largest ICO in Japan. There was a much larger ICO around the world, but still, because there is no regulation, FSA cannot do anything about that ICO. But probably they are thinking of regulating ICO too. And again, the purpose is to get rid of the bad guys.
A very good idea and purpose. And I would like to carry on discussing how you can guarantee to the customer that they will be protected from the bad guys in transactions. You said that you as a company has decided to develop your own digital currency and you want to make it of two types for banks and for consumers. But why do you need those two types? Why not one? And why did you decide to invest in it as a company in order to be a competing competitor of Bitcoin or other companies? Or do you want to create a digital currency together with a regulator?
It is that all of the cryptocurrencies are traded as speculative instruments. It's not for use of payment. Most of the people buy Bitcoin because the price goes up. That's the only reason. Not only, I'm sorry to say that, but probably I would say more than 90% of the Bitcoin buyer buy it because the price goes up. So that's not convenient for the consumers to use as a payment. Even though the number of shops accepting Bitcoin increases, I don't think it will dominate the payment area. So instead, we are going to create a new digital cash so that it can be easily used, less costly, not only for consumers, but also for merchant. So that will be the actually dominating the market. And as I said, we are issuing something new, and other mega banks are issuing something new. But probably I don't think there need to be multiple payment coins. We can converge those coins into one, maybe, in the future. Like the Swish in Sweden, maybe. But better technology wins, and less costly coins survive. That's what I believe. So did I answer your questions?
Yes, you did. And now my last question, because my colleagues would like to ask you questions as well. But where do you see the uniqueness or the advantages of a digital currency as distinct from electronic money? What's the difference?
Okay. There are legal definition. I'm not a legal person. I'm rather a technology guy, so I cannot precisely explain what it is. But legally, they're saying that cryptocurrency should not peg to the fiat currency. That is a legal definition. I mean, Japanese legal definition. And electric money has to be backed up by the fiat currency always, because electric money has to be issued in exchange of the fiat currency. That's Japanese regulation. Cryptocurrency, I can issue cryptocurrency without having any underlying asset. So upon the issuance, the underlying value is zero, always zero. So as Joerg said, why there is a price of the cryptocurrency whose underlying value is zero? Because people trust that the cryptocurrency has some value. So in case of our case, we are going to make market by ourselves first. But based on the clear transparency rule, because we are not bad guy may make market without having rule. So
There's just one subtlety. How do you make everyone believe and support that trust? That's a question to the regulator. Joerg, were you going to add something or what?
I think we talk about the much too high. If you think about new coins or new monetary systems, what has happened? We saw coming up Visa, we saw coming up Master, we saw coming up PayPal, we saw coming up Bitcoin. In the end of the day, you have to buy it. And in the end of the day, it's accounted by your account at the bank. So you pay with real money. That's the fact. If you pay with Visa, at the end of the month, Visa is going to your account and is counting your money. So why is there necessary to make another system like PayPal, Visa, or Bitcoin? It's the same principle. It's called another term. So I disagree when you said most of the people store Bitcoins, 90% of the Bitcoin people store Bitcoin. If it was so, we haven't got circulation. At the moment, we have more than 16.5 million Bitcoins around, and only 6.5 million Bitcoins are in circulation. So if all people hold their Bitcoins, how will you buy Bitcoins? So what is about the thing if I tell you that that's the real worst because the price is going up and it's the only monetary system, it's common for all. We have a ledger you can't fraud. If I make a transaction to you, I don't have to only to make on a Bitcoin transaction with a Bitcoin. I can send, maybe she's taking us and says, okay, we have some regulation, we put it in a PDF file. I transfer the PDF file on the Bitcoin blockchain because it's a file transfer protocol and send it to a Bitcoin. So we have a number, it's in the ledger. And even in 100 years, I can show and prove that she was right because you can't fraud the ledger. All of your solutions are controlled by someone. That's a big difference. If I have a choice to have a system I can't control and you can prove directly, it's the monetary system of truth. It's not a monetary system of to say that something is right. It is the only truth inside after we have made this transaction and it is in the public ledger. And so, how would you taking about the truth if you have a system who can't be fraud by anyone? But you're building systems you can fraud. Where's the trust in? And in my opinion, I trust in mathematics. I don't believe in the Bitcoin price. Thanks.
Когда я комментировала
When I said 90 or 99%, it was about ICO, not about currencies. But okay, we do believe in mathematics, and quite probably we must believe it, but we need other tools as well. Andrey, a question for you. You are vice chairman of the State Duma committee to fight corruption, and the colleagues have said that there's a lot of good in permitting private currencies because it's a measure of trust, a certain value, because people believe that this currency will rise in value and that it will be exchangeable. And we have the experience of Chinese colleagues. China has recently prohibited ICO and exchange purchase and selling, although they used to have a site which was #1 for those operations and transactions. But after analyzing the risks and realizing that it contained more threats than advantages, took this decision. So what do you think should be the choice we should take?
Thanks a lot for the question. Before giving my position, taking into account that we have such an authoritative audience, I would like to tell what is happening in the Russian parliament with respect to the cryptocurrencies. In March 2016, in the Committee on Security and Combating Corruption, there was a working group. A year and a half, had we seen the mass media, the reference to cryptocurrency was quite few, and it's a hype now. So we received information from mass media, allegedly, that the Ministry of Finance has developed a draft law on criminal liability for using cryptocurrency. And then the attitude was to prohibit everything. And then the representative of all the agencies and the representative of the authorities were against it initially, but then there was different approaches. Initially, as I said, it was to prohibit, to ban everything. Then the draft law was not presented to the State Duma, and we were under the impression that that kind of approach is getting more liberal. It was involving emotions. Everybody was interested, and nobody could give a definition what cryptocurrency is, what blockchain is, and though these two things are hand in glove. Within the year and a half of the work of our working group, we had a lot of exercises. Hundreds of people were visited. We had scientific conference, 350 attendees, 10 countries from the US as well, and the United Russia party had an exercise as well. And at the moment, we are not definite in which direction to move. The only thing is the State Duma believes that it is necessary to regulate that kind of processes. There are 3 committees, or now it is 4 committees. It is on Economic Development, Finance Committee, and Information Monitoring Committee, and our committee have monitoring boards. So why 4 committees? It is not clear which committee should be responsible for it. One is economy, then it is IT, and because it's dealing with blockchain, and finance committee, of course. And 2 weeks ago, the Council on the Digital Economy, Sberbank of Russia, had a day of exercises to study the processes associated with Bitcoin and blockchain. So we are dealing with it. We are looking into it, and the next year will make us see in which direction to move. And so there are hoaxes, there are scams, because some trust and the others abuse the trust, and reference the value of taxes, whether 20 or 80%, and still there are some that do not pay taxes, whether it's 20% or 80%, and it means that it should be regulated, because there are still somebody who do not pay the taxes. And in this country, who in the 90s faced scams and hoax in the financial areas. And there are a lot of internet users in this country, and so we cannot do without citizens using it. And we have intrinsic risks for the citizens, for individuals, but for the state as well. I have a memo over here. Article 75 of the Constitution reads that the currency is ruble. It's the Constitution. There's a federal law on the Bank of Russia. The article reads, and it is forbidden to issue money surrogates that are issued by citizens. So at the moment, the different things like the cryptocurrencies and etc., they undermine the financial system and against the Constitution and the federal law. And if we take the average citizens, let us analyze what are the incentives for cryptocurrency. It is anonymous and trans-border, so it attracts crime, the crime. It is a tool of crime, and it is the proceed. So terrorism, corruption, and different other crimes are financed, and extortion as well, by cryptocurrency. And when we are talking about the subject of crime, the cryptocurrency is stolen. And ICO at the moment is an opportunity of the fraudulent scam. And while there were no scandals and there are no criminal cases, because there are no legal regulations yet, even in terms of definitions, terminology, we do not understand what is cryptocurrency, what criminal acts it breaches, and the criminal system in the predicament. If it is Article 150, it is on fraud, then that particular article is cannot be applied then to that kind of scams. As I said, there are no cases, no criminal cases in Russia when cryptocurrency was used as a bribe. We cannot say that we have caught somebody in cold blood that terrorism was financed, but there are statistical reports from the Interpol. And there was a study held reference the extortionists when they are developing the software and they request cryptocurrency. And in 2016, there was an increase of crime, but 600, 700%. And we can expect that there was an increase in financing terrorism and corruption. And any official can buy cryptocurrency and declare nothing in Russia because there's no law on it. And at any time, I can turn cryptocurrency into conventional money and back. And the world and Russia has taken a number of laws to fight corruption and the banking secrecy, privacy. It does not exist anymore, and we have to legalize everything and to make everything transparent. And cryptocurrency makes everything stealthy, and the bad guys are using it quite vigorously. And then cryptocurrency is a subject of stealth. And there are special phishing sites, websites that are developed using false pretenses and ICO, the law trying to protect the citizens that have been acquiring tokens. I think that's the word. And I think in 2017, there will be cases and scandals when the citizens will be deceived. So what is a token? Is it a bond, a security? What is it? And I've been dealing with it for a year and a half, and I still vague about it. When they ask me, tell me what is cryptocurrency, I cannot properly explain it. To say nothing about the citizens, they have even less awareness of cryptocurrency. In May, it was $500, and then it was a few months later, it was $2,500, and the people rushed to buy it. So, is it good or is it bad? I do not see anything good about it. Bad things, I have given you the bad things. There is no statistics not available because it's anonymous. Nothing could be checked. We are in a strange situation. Even if we tell you a story, then we need to have to explain. We cannot give you the statistics. Even the FATF cannot. How the money are laundered. The statistics is not available. So how to fight it? I don't know. I could be more liberal, but I think the regulators, the lawmakers, should think about the protection of the citizens first, because under the influence of those rash, they could be involved in illicit operations. And FIN monitoring agency that is supposed to track the illicit operations. And if there is a transaction that is not possible to track anybody, then it is the shady operation. It is in the risk zone. So we should make a progress, of course, in the area of regulations by the state of cryptocurrencies. Thank you, Andrey. And I think for us to evaluate the advantages, the pros and cons, we should start from square one, from the legal framework for the state and the customers to understand what could be done with it, and what are the rights and responsibilities, liabilities as a customer and a state. We participate at many venues, and indeed there were deliberations in the government and the parliament on it, and I think in the near future we will initiate the definitions and to address this task. I would like to give floor to Mr. Alexei Parferov, and it's on the ICO. Okay, we have talked about the applications of cryptocurrencies. Our colleagues from Japan told us how many advantages there are, talking about the risks as well. And Andrey, he sees it from his perspective, but he's also right. And you, as the company providing services to the customers, do you really want to offer some products involving private currencies and ICO, or do you regard the state-of-the-art technologies, but not the products generated from with their help? Joerg is handing hands. When he has 240,000 bitcoins in his purse, I think it's $1 billion, then is he? Yeah, we will give Joerg floor after you, and then we'll give floor to first you and then Mr. Molt. Okay. And nobody saw Satoshi Motomoto, and that here is a person who have been communicating with the icon, and when we offered Joerg to come over here, I didn't realize that he was there in the beginning since 90s. It was one of his business initiatives. Let me try to be brief. We have less than 15 minutes. And indeed, that kind of approach of Andrey, he is tough, strict, but I think it is fair. We are in the beginning of the way on cryptocurrencies and their derivatives, and I think treading carefully and looking into all the fraudulent schemes that do exist, and there is a great number of the dealers and wheelers use the possibilities of the cryptocurrencies should attract the attention of the policymakers and regulators. Talking about the investment entities who have clients as issuers that need different liquidity, not only the companies in the classical economy, but the high-tech sector. On the other hand, we have investors who would like to always have something new. And for them, the current hype, which dates back to 2 years, is something to dot-coms of the 90s and noughties. And I was there myself. I lost a hell of a lot of money myself, and I have the right not to buy anything in the hype. I realize it might be possible to earn for the rest of the life, and I could have earned at the MMM scam and some other scams of the 90s if I had been fast, but that was not the case. As far as my attitude towards ICO is concerned, let me give you the classics. ICO is a derivative of IPO, one way or another. And however, the cash is substituted with the coins. It's not even a cryptocurrency, but it is and the possibility of the high-tech company to have a business idea and to buy a smart contract link to cryptocurrency and have liquidity is very lucrative. It's an attractive initiative. But what is the quality of the IPO? IPO is a diverse array of documentation, verification of third parties, tax advisors, auditors, the investment banks that are book runners that do due diligence and who answer with their goodwill. Nothing is like that in the white paper. It is just a marketing document, and everything around it is just a selling framework, and the effective ICO is converting marketing money into liquidity. Received on the 29th of September, the Security and Exchange Commission of the U.S., after equalizing IPO and ICO, they imposed sanctions of two companies with the single owner named Maxim Zaslavsky. One company issued such a product as access for discontinued trade of diamonds, not clear why high tech, and the other real estate. One was Rig.com and the other had different name. It was a big fake, and it was just based on the opportunities that the ICO can offer, and there was no underpinning under it. At this moment, the American entrepreneur of Russian origin has no opportunity to act in his endeavors, and all the money that received should be paid back to the investors that invested into it. It's a good example to study for different reasons. It means that the ICO at the moment, it is just a channel, and it is not related to high tech. If you look into it, it is just some kind of wrapping that the citizens might buy because it is available online. As Joerg has said, any person who does not tell between bond and stock can click and buy an asset that has nothing under it. And the regulation that should exist in this area should definitely distinguish between the professional participators from laymen. The layman should not have an access to such a complicated product. It would be wrong, and at the moment they cannot. They should buy simpler financial instruments, to say nothing about those high-tech tools.
In conclusion, I'd like to say that ICO is a good opportunity for our country, and if you look at the standards for assessing the future cash flows of high-tech companies that have to be met, and what tools must be employed in terms of KYC and money laundering, this set of measures should be geared to high-tech companies, and it can enable our country, this country, against the background of tougher regulations in the West, Southeast Asia, and America, to become Russia, to enable Russia to become a country of opportunities, even amid sanctions. I don't know what Vitaly Buterin talked about when meeting with the higher leaders, but when there's no regulation, there's an opportunity to acquire liquidity and crypto assets flowing into your country, but it should not be a way for fraudsters to employ. We need to regulate it in terms of ICO, but cryptocurrencies is a separate issue. That's it. As regards ICO, even if it's regulated, you have not mentioned one other question. How do you clearly understand whether there is any security behind or any assets behind a currency, even in the case when it's diamonds or property? So the company should really have some guarantee before it issues tokens that there are assets behind them. Yes, of course, if you look at what an issuer offers to the investor, there's the institution or the set of institutions and documentation and verifiers like auditors, legal advice experts, investment banks themselves that conduct due diligence. All these tools offered in the standards defined will guarantee to the buyer the substance and quality that actually reflects the physical condition of the company. I can give you an interesting example. My business partner is a well-known Russian entrepreneur, Leonid Boguslavsky, who has invested in India, and he has been listed in Forbes. As a result, initially thought he was wise enough not to use any consultants or advisors to invest in those complicated Indian companies, but he lost all money after a couple of deals. But then he realized that in order to sort out what they are like and what's the difference between what they declare and what they are, one needed to have a very strong staff of analysts, legal advisors, and experts, industry experts. He made the simple decision he could not do that alone, and he decided he would only co-invest with the world's largest funds like Metrics, Sequoia, or Tyre, and put his eggs into different baskets because they are companies that verify business models and cut off the bad guys because 90% of them only want to gain enough liquidity and then disappear. And it was only after that that his business got going. I have a question for Dmitry. Why do we need ICO? We have IPO. We have the standard tools and other investment procedures which enjoy a good reputation and protect businesses and customers. So when you considered taking part in an ICO, what were you guided by? Or do you really give up ICOs because of the hype and risks that there are? Thank you. That's an interesting subject, and let me tell you what we do. We have always been involved in acquiring traffic and its monetization. We have a cashback-related project. One of our major partners is AliExpress, and as soon as we saw the trend with the Bitcoin, there are a lot of ICO offers, and the traffic is structured interestingly. Who pays more for a click or a show? That's the guy whose ads will be shown. We have seen a number of competitive offers and soluble colleagues capable of paying for the traffic, and we decided to look deeper into it. I began to buy Bitcoins in 2011. They were worth several dollars then, and with the ICO, strange things are happening. It's interesting. to see who is it for. The state authorities are never at pace with the innovation. And I could cite a few examples. I won't cite Russian founders, but someone needs to start speaking about it and give specific examples. So let's look at one of the major ICOs we've seen. For example, there was the project 10x Tech, one of the most famous projects which attracted 6 million in 15 minutes. There was Buterin, then he disappeared as an investor, and the idea was let's turn bitcoins into cash all over the world, and that's cool. I agree that it's a cool idea, and there's a lot of people with crypto and don't know how to get rid of it because it's problematic nowadays. So they set up schools and everything. But what happens here, we have seen that 10x project, they would issue visas for a long time. Then they switched over to MasterCard. But you will find that there are no logos on their websites, no Visa or MasterCard logos. And as far as I know, MasterCard has never issued any permissions associated with cryptocurrencies. And so what happens is that those who don't understand any regulation, they just make a wrapping of some website and then go to some enterprise that makes cards for like Sberbank and asks for and place an order for a number of cards like those. Those cards are given to the start-uppers and they begin to distribute them and transfer some money to the factory. Of course, no one understands what is going on, and I think now 10x used to issue Visa cards all over the world, now in Europe alone. Because they have an issuer that practices it. They are from Gibraltar. They do gambling too, and that's a separate story. I'm very positive, as a matter of fact, about it.
About 10x, one question I have. MobileMe from the Chinese make it with Visa to make happen that I can pay with bitcoins all over the world with a Visa card, no matter where I am. 10x was collecting $80 million, and Mobi has done the same with $1 million. What happens to $79 million? Please explain.
Joerg, все очень достаточно просто, да, если вы зайдете на сайт 10x.tech.
If you access 10x.tech, there are card terms. You will see who issues those cards and how the program is entitled. It's entitled Matthew's Corporate, and it has nothing to do with 10x. That's why they have no logos, so that the MasterCard and Visa anti-fraud departments couldn't disclose that. I am just giving you specific examples. There are many other startups, Talking Card or Monaco. They do the same thing, and the problem is that now it's only becoming established, the blockchain and cryptocurrency technologies. And the question is, how are we going to build relations with the regulator and the governments? And I'm sure that you understand what we're talking about. And if we make believe that everything's all right, it's a card that you can send to China, and they still continue doing that, 10x, of course, will be closed down after October 15th, but this will lead to a situation in which all those associated with cryptocurrencies will be told, well, you've got to stop it. And yes, indeed, it's cool and it's great. There's a demand for it, but with or without ICOs, we need to think hard about how to. Well, if we don't make the rules now, if we don't show what's wrong and what's right, there will be no innovation at all. Because so far, people are not yet well versed in bitcoins, but at some point in time they can just come to us with guns and everything will be stopped. As a matter of fact, Andrey, you complained you had no facts provided. Now, on your right is the person who can help you with many factual things. Now, Eddie? Yes, as a practical man, on the basis of our discussion, I've come to three conclusions that I would like to share with you. I quite agree with the message that we heard at the plenary yesterday, that new technologies bring and open up more opportunities than risks. On the other hand, there's a different statement that reflects our discussion in part, which is that life is complicated, but luckily it's short. And I'd like to suggest we focus on the Internet of Assets and everything associated with actual business. And let's leave cryptocurrencies to our colleagues from Japan. Let them go through trial and error and then tell us what we need to do. As far as I understand that you wanted to use technologies for digital assets, we still will have to work on it and work on the definition. But there's someone in the audience to whom I would like to ask two simple questions, and I'd like to hear simple answers. My first question is to Sergei Solonin. Sergey, you are not only a successful entrepreneur and competitor in digital banking, you're also a progressive-minded and innovative person who always wants to adopt the new thing. You don't always assess risks well, but you're always ready to share with others what should be done and what should not. So what's your opinion about private cryptocurrencies? But brief, please. Be brief, please. Well, I have been involved in this discussion for about 18 months here, and those who discuss whether to allow or to ban. Both camps don't normally understand what it's all about. When you ask them what is it you want to allow or ban, people are at a loss. I've been studying the essence of this for a year and a half, and my approach is based on the idea of let's look at the essence. When you say ICO, you put it all together. But there are cryptocurrencies that are used in pay and settlements. Let's put them away, because so far we're not prepared to allow them. Let's take them off the table. Now, as regards cryptocurrencies, let's think about the national electronic currencies. There's a good opportunity to work in this area, in this domain, with this type of asset, where are going to gain some experience and support the market and see how this electronic currency can replace cash and whether the population will like it. Then there are tokens. There's also ICO, and there are different essences. There are tokens that are obligations or securities. Why not make it part or subject to the securities law? If there's an enterprise that issues tokens that affect me as a stockholder, what is the law I will go by in suing them? So my proposal. And then there are also utility tokens. That is interesting things where you can, which you can play with. And there I wouldn't issue too many prohibitions. I would watch it and maybe limit it with some amount and place some restrictions. But I would still let them play. There are some interesting projects. I know them personally, some of them. And my proposal is if those cryptocurrencies are created in order to circumvent the law, then of course they must not be allowed. Of course they must not. But if it's about some future technology that can entail something of interest, then you should try it, and you need not lag behind others. Thank you very much. Now, Olga, a question for you. As a business person who offers products and services to legal entities and individuals, when we define in legal terms what a national digital currency or asset is and whether, well, do you need it? And then in terms of ICO, do you think it's a progressive form of investment mobilization, or the existing mechanisms are enough? Briefly, to your first question, whether we need additional tools to work with different assets, of course we do, because bringing of any new tool to a market always generates a class of investors that are ready to use this tool. Banks begin to earn money and investors earn money, so it's always useful. But then the question of what kind of instrument it should be, whether digital, well, the digital assets that are described in the law will help reinforce those digital assets in the economy, even beyond those new technologies. Whether it's a currency or a different instrument, well, we need to adopt them, but before that, a sandbox is needed, and we need to test it. We cannot adopt what has not been fully described, because we, all of us, have different definitions of what digital assets are, what electronic money is, and so on. And what was your second question about ICO? It's a repetition of the classical instruments and sites in a light version. As soon as regulation is in place, all corporate law will be in place, and all the documentation will simply become digitized. So as soon as the regulator makes the decision, all the digital channels will be in place for such sites and sales.
Yeah.
Thanks, colleagues. We are about to finish. I would like to sum up. In the long run, we have come to a very brief conclusion. We should indeed define the legal framework. We should introduce the definitions, legal things, and consequences of applications of the regulations, and we should develop the sandbox, and the association of fintech together with the central bank will launch the sandbox, and we cannot do without, because the other countries are going ahead with it, and we should not lag behind. And there are different options, different approaches of how to treat both the technology and private currencies, and whether there is any point in developing digital currency in a Russian national digital currency. But I think if we make a decision to use digital currency for the benefit of the people, it would open up opportunities for us and make life convenient and more comfortable for us. Thanks for the interesting discussion. I would like to thank you all.